humans make really bad IDEs, right? Like you're going to have a really hard time and you're going to have a really miserable life if you're going through trying to detect like, okay, did they put the parentheses in the right spot, or did they use the arrow or dot or whatever symbol correctly? Like your job is not to catch that. That's the job of the IDE, or even better would be some sort of like continuous integration system. And also like for things like style, there's no correct answer, right? There is no such thing as like the best style. What you want to do in those situations is basically agree upon some standardized set of rules and then comply with that. And ideally, any deviation from that standardized agreement will be flagged automatically for you by your CI system. And it's not the job of the reviewer to actually go down that rabbit hole and like try and debug or identify all those issues. One way of framing a good review is to ask yourself the question, how would you write the diff if you were in the author's shoes? And so like what that means is um, when you read the title of the code change, and maybe you can read the description and test plan, before you read the code, ask yourself the question, okay, someone gave me this task. Let me spend 5 minutes right now just thinking or writing down how I would go about making the change. Like what file would I touch? What module would I change? What dependency would I add? Whatever it might be. And now you're coming into the review with an opinion. So rather than just giving the green check mark because nothing looks egregiously wrong, nothing looks horrible, you're going a little bit deeper. And that's what this picture is showing. Go a little bit deeper and asking the question of what would you do if you were the one who had to come up with it? And almost for sure, you're not going to write the code the exact same way that the author wrote it. And that now gives you a good amount of ammunition, if you will, of like, here's how I can now make this code review better and offer a meaningful piece of feedback rather than just, consider adding a new line here. Like that's not really additive to you or the code change. And then, yeah, Alex, do you want to talk about this last point about observing and learning from senior engineers?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a question in the YouTube chat, which is a good one, which is as a junior engineer, how do I get better at code review? Yeah. So like with a lot of things, code review, getting good at code review, takes time. There's really no like shortcut, there's no like book you can read to become a master of code review overnight. It all takes time. But if there was one tactical thing that I had to recommend for a junior or like even like mid-level engineer who wants to become a beast at code review and really start adding value to the team, is look at how senior engineers reject diffs. And this is just, as Rahul mentioned, you really can't go wrong learning from smart people. And honestly, like the name of the game in software engineering is just to mimic and copy in so many ways. And this is no different, right? It's like, why go through the work of understanding like all these complex ways on your own that, diffs can be bad when you can just learn from, senior engineers with 5, 10, 15 years of experience who have already figured out like, the 5 or 10 common ways that a diff can be, can have problems, right? So, what I would do if I was a junior engineer is I would essentially like just generally some automated way you can do this, but like you set up like an email filter or a Slack bot or something where like, if any like senior engineer or, tech lead level person like on your team or like some sister team rejects a diff, it just like notifies you, and then just like go there and boom, that's your reading material. And then look for patterns, look for how they're rejecting diffs, like what kind of issues are they calling out. And the beautiful thing is like if you do this properly, it's going to be like one of those like Voltron scenarios where you start learning all the different attributes that make all the tech leads and senior engineers great, and you start essentially incorporating them into like into your game, into your insights, and then you just become like an amazing engineer. And I've done this myself quite a lot. I remember when I was at Instagram, there was this one engineer who would always point out issues with frame drops. So a frame drop is, for mobile in particular, is you write some crappy code, generally doing a lot of work on the main thread, where essentially like makes the app stutter and then not redraw, not play videos or something properly for like, a half a second or a second. Bad experience with the user, but he was really good at catching issues, that would cause frame drops. And then he would call that out on like so many diffs that he reviewed. And I started reading like his comments and the code that he would critique, like be like, hey, this could probably cause frame drops, just move to the background there. And I started noticing like the patterns that he would look for on diffs, that would be susceptible to frame drops. And then I started incorporating that into my diff review game and started calling that out. And that's one of those things within that healthy code review range that Rahul mentioned before. Like, preventing a frame drop is actually like very, very important. And just like doing things on the background thread that are expensive is just a good code habit and like code based pattern to follow in general for like so many different reasons. So like this is just one example of many, how you can essentially quickly level up your diff review game by, again, just profit off the work of others, right? If they've done the hard work to identify all these very nuanced, tricky coding patterns that people often get wrong, just leverage that.